Case 1. Jesus Preciado Dustin, a 33-year-old man, was driving through Glendale, Arizona in August 2025. On that day, he became involved in a traffic argument with another driver. Police later stated that the dispute occurred on a public road near an intersection. The argument grew fast. Anger took control. During that moment, Jesus Preciado Dustin pulled out a gun and fired a single shot from his vehicle. That choice set off a chain of events that ended an innocent life. Investigators said the gunshot was meant for another driver involved in the traffic dispute. The bullet did not hit that person. Instead, it traveled across lanes and entered a nearby vehicle. Inside that car sat Yareli Ashley Hermosillo, a 27-year-old wife, mother, and social media creator. She was riding with her husband, her young son, and her mother. She was not part of the argument. She had no connection to the drivers involved. The bullet struck her in the head while her family sat beside her. Emergency workers were called to the scene right away. Yareli's husband tried to help her as they waited. The injury was very serious. Despite medical efforts, Yareli later died from the gunshot wound. Her husband, child, and mother were not physically hurt, but they witnessed everything. In seconds, a road argument between strangers destroyed a family. Police in Glendale moved quickly to find the person responsible. Officers reviewed video, gathered witness accounts, and tracked the vehicle linked to the gunshot. Jesus Preciado Dustin was identified as the shooter. He was arrested and taken into custody. Authorities said the evidence showed he fired the gun during the traffic dispute. They made it clear that Yareli was a bystander and played no role in what happened. Prosecutors filed serious charges against Jesus Preciado Dustin. Court records show he faces second-degree murder, aggravated assault, misconduct involving weapons, and endangerment. Officials said these charges reflect the danger created when a firearm is used during a moment of traffic anger. The case focused on the choice to fire a gun in a public place, where many people were nearby and at risk. Yareli Ashley Hermosillo was well known online for sharing food videos, family moments, and daily life. Many people followed her because her content felt warm and simple. She often showed life at home and moments with her child. On the day she was killed, she was doing something ordinary. She was riding in a car with her family. There was no warning. There was no way to avoid what happened. News of her death spread quickly. People across Arizona and beyond reacted with sadness and disbelief. Many struggled to understand how a traffic argument could end with a gun being fired. Yareli's family spoke publicly about their loss. They described her as loving, kind, and deeply devoted to her child. They also shared how hard it was to accept that she died because of someone else's anger. Community members gathered to honor Yareli's life. Vigils were held, and messages of support were shared with her family. Many people called for patience on the road and for drivers to step away from conflict. As the legal process continues, the focus remains on accountability for the shooting and on remembering Yareli Ashley Hermosillo as a person, not just a victim. By the way, if you enjoy true crime videos, this is the right channel for you. I post interesting videos on the channel daily. Please support my channel by liking this video and subscribing to the channel. Thank you very much. Case 2. Dylan Rasmussen was a husband, a father, and an active-duty United States Marine whose life ended during a road rage shooting in Onslow County, North Carolina. On Sunday, October 19, 2025, Dylan left home on his motorcycle expecting a normal ride. It was a routine trip, the kind he had taken many times before. He did not know that a short and heated moment on the road would turn into a deadly encounter. Dylan was riding his motorcycle near the area of Burgaw Highway and Holly Shelter Road. Deputies said the trouble began while Dylan and another driver were both traveling on the roadway. Words were exchanged. Tension grew fast. What started as a traffic argument quickly became more serious. Witness accounts and police reports showed that neither man drove away when they had the chance. Instead, both vehicles stopped. That decision changed everything. The other driver was identified as 43-year-old James Wells. Investigators said that once both men stopped, the argument continued outside their vehicles. During this confrontation, Wells pulled out a gun. He fired one shot, striking Dylan in the chest. Dylan fell to the ground, badly injured. People nearby called for help as quickly as they could. Emergency responders arrived and rushed Dylan to the hospital. Doctors tried to save his life, but the wound was too severe. Dylan Rasmussen died from the gunshot injury. Law enforcement officers responded quickly to the scene. Deputies secured the area and began collecting evidence. They spoke with witnesses who saw or heard the confrontation. Investigators worked step by step to understand how the argument began and how it turned deadly so fast. James Wells was taken into custody without delay. Police later announced that Wells was charged with second-degree murder. A judge set his bond at $500,000 as the case moved forward through the court system. As news of Dylan Rasmussen's death spread, the shock reached far beyond Onslow County. Family members, friends, neighbors, and fellow Marines struggled to accept what had happened. Many described Dylan as a calm and caring person who loved his family deeply. He was a devoted husband who worked hard to provide for his home. He was also a proud father who cared deeply about his child's future. Those who knew him said his role as a Marine mattered greatly to him. He took pride in serving his country and living with purpose. Members of the military community expressed sorrow and anger over Dylan's death. To them, he was not just a name in a news report. He was a fellow service member who had committed himself to protecting others. The fact that his life was taken during a road rage encounter made the loss even harder to understand. Many said it showed how fragile life can be, even for someone trained and disciplined like a Marine. Residents also reacted strongly to the case. People who live near Burgaw Highway and Holly Shelter Road said they travel that area often. They described it as a place where drivers pass through every day without thinking twice. Dylan's death forced many to slow down and think about how anger on the road can grow without warning. Neighbors spoke about feeling uneasy and heartbroken that such violence happened so close to home. The case continues through the legal system, but the loss remains permanent. Dylan left behind people who loved him and a future that will never be lived. His story stands as a serious reminder that no road argument is worth a life. Staying calm, walking away, and choosing restraint can make the difference between getting home safely and causing harm that can never be reversed. Case 3. Emmanuel Matias's anger during a road dispute led to the death of another person and a long prison sentence. In November 2021, Emmanuel Matias was driving through Stamford, Connecticut. What should have been a normal drive turned into a violent act that took a life. Years later, a judge would sentence him to prison for what happened on a city road. On November 17, 2021, Emmanuel Matias was involved in a minor traffic collision on Cold Spring Road in Stamford. The other driver was Michael Frank Gentile, a 71-year-old Stamford resident. The contact between the vehicles was small. No one was badly hurt at that moment. Both vehicles were still working. This was a point where the situation could have ended. Emmanuel Matias could have driven away. Michael Gentile could have gone home. Instead, the argument continued. After the traffic incident, Emmanuel Matias followed Michael Gentile's vehicle. Court records show that Matias forced Gentile to stop on Cold Spring Road. When both vehicles stopped, Matias got out of his car. Michael Gentile was much older than Matias. He was 71 years old and did not have a weapon. What happened next lasted only a short time but had lasting results. Emmanuel Matias confronted Michael Gentile face to face. During this confrontation, Matias struck Gentile with his fist. The force of the punch caused Michael Gentile to fall backward. When he fell, his head hit the ground. That fall caused a serious head injury. Emergency services were called to the scene. Michael Gentile was taken to a hospital for treatment. Michael Frank Gentile did not die right away. Doctors tried to help him, but his injuries were severe. 2 days later, he died at the hospital. Medical examiners later confirmed that he died from blunt force trauma to the head. His death was ruled a homicide. A traffic disagreement had turned into a fatal act of violence. Police arrested Emmanuel Matias after the incident. Investigators began collecting evidence. They spoke to witnesses, reviewed video footage, and examined medical reports. These steps helped authorities understand how the confrontation unfolded. The evidence showed that Michael Gentile's death was not the result of an accident. Prosecutors argued that Emmanuel Matias acted in anger and caused the injuries that led to Gentile's death. At first, Emmanuel Matias faced multiple criminal charges. As the case moved through the court system, both sides reviewed the evidence. Over time, prosecutors and defense lawyers reached an agreement. In September 2024, Emmanuel Matias pleaded guilty to first-degree manslaughter. By doing so, he accepted responsibility for causing Michael Gentile's death through reckless and violent behavior. Sentencing took place on January 10, 2025. In court, the judge reviewed the facts of the case, the age of the victim, and the seriousness of the injury. Emmanuel Matias was sentenced to 10 years in prison. The judge also added 5 years of probation to follow his release. The sentence reflected the court's view that a moment of road rage caused permanent harm. Michael Frank Gentile was 71 years old at the time of his death. He was a longtime Stamford resident. He was driving on a familiar road during the day. He was not looking for conflict. His family later spoke about the pain of losing him. They described how one short confrontation took away a loved one who should have returned home. If you found this video interesting so far, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. Thanks for your support. Case 4. David Castro was a 17-year-old boy from Houston, Texas, whose life ended because of anger on the road. On July 6, 2021, David was riding in a car with his father, Paul Castro, and his younger brother. They were driving home after attending a Houston Astros baseball game. It was supposed to be a happy night. The game was over and the family was heading home together. Instead, a traffic dispute turned into a deadly shooting. David was hit in the head by a gunshot. He was taken to the hospital, but doctors could not save him. That night began like many family outings. Paul Castro was driving, focused on traffic and getting his sons home safely. While on the road, another driver, later identified as Gerald Williams, became angry during traffic. Reports show that Williams and the Castro family were involved in a road argument that lasted for several miles. The situation did not calm down. Williams followed their vehicle. At one point, he pulled alongside them. Then he fired a gun into the car. One bullet struck David, who was sitting inside and had no way to protect himself. Paul Castro reacted as any parent would. He tried to get help as fast as possible. He called emergency services and rushed to a safe place. Police and medical workers arrived quickly. David was taken to the hospital, where doctors fought to save his life. Despite their efforts, David died from his injuries. Paul Castro survived, but his life was changed forever. In a matter of seconds, he lost his son to an act of road rage. After the shooting, Gerald Williams drove away from the scene. Police launched an investigation right away. They gathered witness statements, reviewed video footage, and traced the vehicle involved. Officers later arrested Williams and charged him with murder. Authorities said the shooting was not accidental. It came from anger during a traffic dispute. They made it clear that no one needed to die that night. Driving away could have prevented the loss of a young life. David Castro's death deeply affected his family, friends, and the Houston community. Those who knew David described him as a loving son and a normal teenager with dreams ahead of him. He enjoyed spending time with his family and going to games. His father, Paul Castro, spoke publicly about the pain of losing a child. He explained how a simple drive turned into a nightmare that never ends. His words showed the deep hurt that remains long after the crime itself. The case took time to move through the court system. For more than a year, Paul Castro and his family waited for justice. Court hearings were delayed, and the legal process moved slowly. Then, in January 2023, Gerald Williams appeared in court and pleaded guilty to murder. By entering the plea, he admitted responsibility for David Castro's death. The judge sentenced Williams to 30 years in prison. The plea deal ended the case without a full trial. During the sentencing, Paul Castro spoke in court. He talked about the future his son would never have. He spoke about birthdays that would never be celebrated, graduations that would never happen, and memories that would never be made. He explained how his family now lives with loss every day. The courtroom heard directly from a father whose child was taken by violence on the road. The court records showed that David was not part of the argument. He was a passenger. He did nothing wrong. He was simply riding with his family. This fact made the case even more painful. A teenager lost his life because someone else could not control their anger while driving. Case 5. Nicholas Prather, a 42-year-old man from Tacoma, Washington, was involved in a road conflict that ended with the death of a young boy. Police say his actions during a traffic dispute led to a shooting that killed a 14-year-old boy. This story shows how a moment of anger on the road can destroy a young life and change many families forever. On December 5, 2025, police were called to a shooting near East 64th Street and McKinley Avenue in Tacoma. Officers arrived and found a teenage boy with a gunshot wound. Medical workers rushed to help him, but he later died. Because the victim was a minor, his name was not released. Police confirmed that the shooting followed a conflict between people in separate vehicles. What started as a traffic problem did not stop. It moved into a face-to-face confrontation and ended with a gun being fired. Investigators said the road conflict began while the vehicles were moving. Witnesses reported shouting and gestures between drivers. The situation grew tense. Both vehicles stopped. The teenager got out of one vehicle. According to court records, Nicholas Prather was also present at the scene. During the confrontation, Prather fired a gun. The bullet struck the 14-year-old boy. The child collapsed. His injuries were fatal. After leaving the area, Nicholas Prather later turned himself in to the police. During questioning, he told investigators that he believed he was protecting himself. Court documents state that Prather claimed the teenager used pepper spray during the confrontation. Detectives gathered witness statements, reviewed physical evidence, and examined the scene. They also reviewed any available video and statements from people nearby. Prosecutors studied the evidence carefully. After reviewing the facts, they charged Nicholas Prather with murder. They said the use of a gun during a road conflict crossed a clear and serious line. Police emphasized that this was not random violence and not an accident. It was a traffic dispute that escalated into deadly force. A child who was not driving lost his life. The case moved into the court system. A judge reviewed the early filings and ordered Prather held as the case continued. News outlets reported on the court hearings and shared details from official filings so the public could understand what happened. Police asked the community to respect the privacy of the victim's family, especially because the victim was a child. The impact on Tacoma was deep. Neighbors near the scene described hearing sirens and seeing police cars fill the street. Parents said the case made them think about their own children riding in cars every day. Many people expressed fear about how fast road conflicts can turn deadly. Community leaders urged drivers to stay calm, slow down, and avoid contact when tensions rise. Case 6. Eli Laughlin's life ended during a road rage shooting in LaPorte, Texas in 2022. He was driving home from work along Highway 146, a road used every day by thousands of people in the Houston area. It was a normal weekday drive, the kind that usually ends with someone pulling into their driveway and seeing family again. For Eli, that trip never ended. A brief and angry encounter on the road turned into gunfire and Eli lost his life. Eli was driving his white Ford F-150 truck southbound on Highway 146 in the stretch between Baytown and Barbers Cut Boulevard. Police said another driver was traveling nearby at the same time. At some point, a disagreement started between the two vehicles while they were still moving. Investigators described the situation as road rage. The conflict grew quickly. What may have started with driving behavior or gestures became personal and heated in a very short time. Witnesses and police reports said the argument did not fade away as the vehicles continued down the highway. Instead, it escalated. During the confrontation, the other driver pulled out a gun and fired. Eli was struck by the bullet while still inside his truck. The shooting happened in public, in full view of a busy roadway where other drivers were nearby and had no warning of what was about to happen. Emergency calls came in right away. First responders rushed to the scene and tried to save Eli's life. Despite their efforts, his injuries were too serious. Eli Laughlin was pronounced dead at the scene. News of the shooting spread quickly across LaPorte and the surrounding areas. Many people struggled to understand how a drive home from work could end so suddenly and violently. Police closed parts of Highway 146 to secure the scene and protect evidence. Traffic was redirected as officers worked along the roadway. Detectives spoke with witnesses who had seen the vehicles before the shooting and after it happened. Investigators also reviewed surveillance footage from nearby cameras to track the movements of both vehicles. Through this work, police learned that the suspect vehicle appeared to be a dark gray pickup truck with dark-tinted windows. At the time of the investigation, police said they believed the shooting followed aggressive driving or an argument between the two drivers. Officers stressed that the people involved did not appear to know each other before the encounter. This detail mattered to investigators because it showed how a brief meeting between strangers on the road could end in deadly violence. The La Porte Police Department asked the public for help. They released descriptions of the suspect vehicle and shared video clips showing the truck believed to be involved. Officers urged anyone who had been driving on Highway 146 at the time, or who recognized the vehicle, to contact police. Investigators hoped that tips from the public would help identify the shooter and explain exactly what happened in the moments leading up to the gunfire. During the early stages of the case, no suspect name was released. Reports at the time said the shooter had not yet been arrested. The investigation remained active, with detectives continuing to review evidence and follow leads. Police made it clear that they were treating the case as a homicide linked to road rage and that they were committed to finding the person responsible. Eli Laughlin's family spoke publicly about their loss. They described Eli as a hardworking man who was simply trying to get home after a day at work. Loved ones said he had plans for the future and people who depended on him. His death created a deep and lasting pain for his family. They said their lives were changed forever by a moment of anger that did not need to happen. Case 7. Joshua Gonzalez lived in Phoenix, Arizona, in 2019. On April 4th of that year, his actions during a road rage encounter led to the death of a child. What began as anger while driving did not stay on the road. It followed a family home and ended with gunfire. One decision made in anger changed many lives forever. That evening, Joshua Gonzalez became upset during a traffic encounter with another vehicle. Police later said the situation grew from frustration between drivers. Instead of driving away, Gonzalez followed the other car through city streets. Inside that vehicle was the Brown family. They were on their way home. In the back seat sat Summerbelle Brown, a 10-year-old girl. She was with her mother, her father, and her sister. She was not aware of the danger building behind them. When the Brown family reached their home and pulled into their driveway, they believed the drive was over. At that moment, Joshua Gonzalez stopped nearby. He pulled out a gun and fired several shots into the family's car. The gunfire happened right outside their home. Summerbelle Brown was struck by a bullet while sitting in the back seat. Her father was also hit. Her mother and sister were not physically injured, but they were inside the car and saw everything. The family rushed to get help. Summerbelle was taken to the hospital, but her injuries were too serious. She died later that night. Her father survived his injuries after receiving medical care. The family returned home without their child. What should have been a safe place became the location of their worst loss. Phoenix police began searching for the shooter right away. The case drew attention across the city and beyond because a child had been killed in front of her family. Police asked the public for help and released details about the suspect and the vehicle involved. Tips came in from community members. Within days, officers arrested Joshua Gonzalez. Police said evidence showed he was the driver who followed the family and fired the gun. Joshua Gonzalez was charged with serious crimes, including first-degree murder and aggravated assault. Prosecutors said the shooting was the result of road rage and that Summerbelle Brown had nothing to do with the traffic dispute. She was a child sitting quietly in her seat. The danger came from an adult who chose to use a gun instead of walking away. As the case moved through the legal system, more details were confirmed. In 2022, Joshua Gonzalez pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and other charges related to the shooting. The court sentenced him to more than 20 years in prison. The sentence reflected the seriousness of killing a child and injuring her father during a moment of uncontrolled anger. Summerbelle Brown's death left a deep mark on the Phoenix community. Neighbors gathered outside the family's home to leave flowers, toys, and notes. Case 8. Tyler Matthew Johns chose to use a gun during a road rage argument on a freeway in Henderson, Nevada in 2025. He was driving his car when he became angry with another driver. Police said the argument happened while both vehicles were moving along the 215 Beltway. Instead of slowing down or pulling away, Johns took out a handgun and fired a single shot into the other vehicle. That one action turned a traffic argument into a murder case. The child who was killed was 11-year-old Brandon Dominguez Chavarria. Brandon was sitting in the back seat of the car. He was riding with his stepfather, Valente Ayala, and other family members. Brandon was on his way to school. He was not yelling. He was not involved in the argument. When the shot entered the vehicle, it struck Brandon. His family tried to get help right away and rushed him for medical care. Doctors worked to save him, but the injury was too severe. Brandon later died from the gunshot wound. Police said the road rage dispute began between Johns and Brandon's stepfather while driving on the freeway near Gibson Road. Witnesses reported aggressive driving and angry gestures between the vehicles. Investigators said the situation grew more intense in a very short time. Johns fired one round from his gun toward the other car. The bullet went through the vehicle and hit the child inside. Officers later said Johns told police he did not know there was a child in the car when he fired. Law enforcement responded quickly after the shooting. Patrol officers closed parts of the freeway to secure the area. Detectives collected shell casings, reviewed traffic camera video, and spoke with witnesses who saw what happened. Police also tracked the vehicle Johns was driving. He was later located, taken into custody, and questioned. During interviews, officers said Johns admitted to firing the gun during the road rage encounter. Prosecutors charged Tyler Matthew Johns with open murder and other related charges. Court records show the case was treated as a serious and violent crime involving the use of a firearm. Due to the age of the victim and the circumstances of the shooting, the Clark County District Attorney's Office reviewed the case carefully. Prosecutors even considered whether the death penalty could apply. Johns was ordered held in custody while the case moved through the court system. The death of Brandon Dominguez Chavarria deeply affected the Henderson community. A memorial was placed near the area where the shooting occurred. Flowers, candles, and messages were left to honor Brandon's life. Family members spoke about Brandon as a kind child who loved school and enjoyed spending time with loved ones. Community members gathered to show support and to call for calm and safety on the roads. Case 9. Jeremy Webster carried out a road rage shooting that killed a child and seriously injured several other people in Westminster, Colorado, on June 14, 2018. What happened that day began with a short moment on the road and ended with a life lost, multiple people wounded, and a prison sentence that will last forever. His actions turned anger while driving into one of the most heartbreaking road rage cases in Colorado. On that day, Jeremy Webster was driving his vehicle when he became upset with another driver. The other driver was Megan Bigelow, who was in her car with her 3 children. Her sons were Vaughn Bigelow Jr., age 13, Cooper, age 12, and Asa, age 7. Megan slowed her car to make room for an emergency vehicle. This was the safe and correct thing to do. Jeremy Webster became angry. He began shouting. He did not let the moment pass. Instead of driving away, he followed the Bigelow family. Jeremy Webster continued to follow them through traffic. The family turned into a dentist office parking lot in Westminster, believing they were arriving at a safe place. Parking lots are meant for families. Children should be safe there. Jeremy Webster followed them into the lot. He stopped his car, got out, and walked toward the Bigelow family's vehicle while holding a gun. Webster opened fire. Megan Bigelow was shot in the back and head. Her young son, Asa, was also shot in the back and head. Both were badly hurt and needed urgent medical care. Vaughn Bigelow Jr. was shot at very close range. He did not survive. In just moments, a 13-year-old boy lost his life while sitting in a car with his family. Another person was also attacked during the shooting. John Gale was sitting in his truck nearby with his young daughter. He was not part of the driving dispute. He was simply there. Reports showed that Jeremy Webster looked directly at John Gale and fired his gun at Gale's truck. John Gale was shot and injured. He was not only a witness, he was also a victim. After being shot, Gale fled the area with his daughter to get away from danger and find help. Police and emergency workers arrived quickly. The parking lot was filled with fear and confusion. Megan Bigelow, Asa Bigelow, and John Gale were rushed to the hospital. Doctors worked hard to save them. Megan survived her injuries after long medical care. Asa survived as well, even though he was very young and badly wounded. John Gale survived his injuries too. Vaughn Bigelow Jr. did not survive. His death left a deep and lasting loss for his family. Jeremy Webster was arrested and charged with serious crimes. Investigators showed that the shooting came from a road rage incident. There was no long relationship between Webster and the victims. The violence happened because Webster chose to act during a moment of anger while driving. During the trial, the court heard long and serious testimony about Jeremy Webster's mental health. The defense argued that Webster suffered from schizoaffective bipolar disorder and claimed that he was legally insane at the time of the shooting. Prosecutors disagreed. A court-appointed psychologist testified that Webster understood what he was doing and knew right from wrong. That expert diagnosed him with borderline personality disorder, not a condition that removed responsibility. After hearing all the evidence, the jury rejected the insanity defense. They found Jeremy Webster legally sane and fully responsible for his actions. In April 2023, the jury reached its final decision. Jeremy Webster was found guilty of first-degree murder for killing Vaughn Bigelow Jr. He was also found guilty of attempted murder and assault for shooting Megan Bigelow, Asa Bigelow, and John Gale. The judge sentenced him to life in prison without the chance of parole, plus additional years for the other charges. He will never be free again. Case 10. Kenneth James Noy was already a known criminal in England long before the night his anger on the road took a young man's life. On 19th May 1996, Noy was driving near the M25 motorway slip road close to Swanley, Kent. What happened during that drive became one of the most well-known road rage murders in British history. His actions that night ended the life of Stephen Cameron, a 21-year-old man who never returned home. Stephen Cameron was traveling with his fiancée, Danielle Cable, on the evening of the attack. They noticed another car following them closely. The driving felt hostile and unsafe. The tension between the two vehicles grew as they approached the slip road. Words were shouted. Both cars stopped. Stephen stepped out of his vehicle. He was unarmed. He did not know the man he was facing. He did not know that this short moment would end his life. Kenneth Noy also got out of his car. During the confrontation, Noy pulled out a knife that he carried in his vehicle. In seconds, he stabbed Stephen Cameron in the chest. The wound was fatal. Stephen collapsed on the roadside. Danielle Cable witnessed the attack. Emergency help was called, but Stephen died at the scene. He was 21 years old. His future ended on a stretch of road meant to help people get home safely. Instead of staying to face the police, Kenneth Noy fled the scene. Soon after, he left the United Kingdom and went to Spain. British police launched a wide search. The case drew national attention. Many people were disturbed by how a traffic dispute could turn into a killing so quickly. Stephen Cameron's family spoke about their pain. Danielle Cable later entered witness protection because of fears for her safety. In 1998, Kenneth Noy was arrested in Spain and returned to the United Kingdom. His trial took place at the Old Bailey in London in 2000. During the trial, Noy claimed he acted to protect himself. The court carefully examined the evidence. The jury heard testimony from witnesses, including Danielle Cable. They reviewed the location, the injuries, and the actions taken by Noy. After considering all the facts, the jury rejected the self-protection claim. On 14 April 2000, Kenneth James Noy was found guilty of murder. The judge sentenced him to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 16 years before parole could even be considered. The sentence reflected the seriousness of the crime and the loss of life. The court made clear that road rage could never excuse deadly force. The murder of Stephen Cameron had a lasting effect across the United Kingdom. His name became linked to discussions about road safety and anger behind the wheel. Stephen was described as kind, caring, and full of plans for the future. He and Danielle were engaged and preparing for their life together. That life was taken away because a road dispute went too far. Years later, the case returned to public attention when Kenneth Noy was released on license in June 2019 after serving part of his life sentence. His release caused anger and fear for Stephen Cameron's family and many members of the public. It also reopened discussions about justice, punishment, and the lasting impact of violent crime. Case 11. Cody Lyle was just 35 years old when he lost his life in a road rage stabbing in northeast Edmonton in 2024. On Monday, February 5, 2024, Cody was involved in a traffic dispute that began on the road and later turned into a violent face-to-face encounter. What should have been an ordinary day became a deadly one. Police later confirmed that Cody's death was a homicide connected to road rage. The incident happened in the area of 35 Street and 122A Avenue in northeast Edmonton. Police said the trouble began while drivers were still moving on the road. A disagreement formed between Cody and another driver. The argument did not stop when the vehicles slowed or changed position. Instead, the situation moved beyond driving behavior. At some point, both men were no longer just separated by their vehicles. The conflict became direct and physical. During this confrontation, Cody Lyle was stabbed. Emergency responders were called and arrived quickly. They found Cody in serious medical distress. Paramedics worked to help him and rushed him to a hospital. Doctors did everything they could to save his life. Despite their efforts, Cody died from his injuries later that day. The medical examiner later ruled his death a homicide. Police secured the area soon after the stabbing. Officers closed off nearby streets and began collecting evidence. Detectives spoke with people who were nearby at the time of the incident. They worked to understand how the disagreement started and how it turned violent in such a short time. Investigators said an important detail stood out early in the case. Cody Lyle did not know the person accused of stabbing him. The two men were strangers who crossed paths only because they were using the same road. This detail mattered because it showed how quickly a brief traffic conflict between people who had never met could turn deadly. Police explained that neither man had a prior connection. There was no long-term dispute. There was no history between them. The violence grew out of a short encounter fueled by anger in the moment. Within days of the incident, police announced an arrest. A 30-year-old man named Jaden Cody Francis Cardinal was taken into custody. He was charged with second-degree murder in connection with Cody Lyle's death. Court records confirmed that the charge was directly tied to the stabbing during the road rage dispute. Police said the investigation showed the violence was not planned ahead of time. It happened quickly, following the argument on the road. The Edmonton Police Service spoke publicly about the case. Officers described it as a serious example of how dangerous road rage can be. They explained that traffic disputes often begin with small actions. These can include following too closely, cutting someone off, or reacting to a mistake. When emotions take over, people may stop thinking clearly. When a weapon is introduced, the danger rises sharply. In this case, that danger ended a life. Case 12. Bianca Nicole Robertson was an 18-year-old young woman from Newcastle, Delaware. On June 28, 2017, her life ended on a Pennsylvania road during a short traffic conflict that turned deadly. Bianca was driving alone that day. She had just finished high school and was thinking about college, her future, and adult life. She was doing something normal. She was using the road like everyone else. She did not know that a few seconds on that road would be the last moments of her life. That afternoon, Bianca was driving in West Goshen Township, Chester County, Pennsylvania. She was heading toward a shopping area. Traffic was moving and cars were trying to position themselves in the right lanes. At one point, Bianca's car and another vehicle tried to merge into the same lane. Police later confirmed this was the only trigger. There was no long argument. There was no history between the two drivers. The other driver was David Desper, a 28-year-old man. As both vehicles continued moving, David Desper became angry. Instead of slowing down or backing away, he pulled out a gun while driving. Without stopping his car, he fired a single shot toward Bianca's vehicle. The bullet went through her car window and struck Bianca in the head. Her car drifted off the road and came to a stop. The sound of traffic continued around her, but Bianca was already badly hurt. Emergency responders arrived quickly, but there was nothing they could do. Bianca Nicole Robertson died at the scene. She was only 18 years old. She was unarmed. She had not threatened anyone. She was alone in her car and had no chance to protect herself. What happened between the two cars lasted only moments, yet it ended a young life forever. After firing the shot, David Desper drove away. He did not stop to help. He did not call for help. Police began searching for him right away. News of the shooting spread fast because of how sudden and shocking it was. A teenager had been killed during a lane merge. There was no robbery. There was no long dispute. It was traffic frustration that turned into gunfire. Later that same day, David Desper surrendered to the police. He was taken into custody without resistance. Investigators said evidence showed he fired the gun during the traffic conflict. Police also confirmed that Bianca had no weapon and did nothing violent. The case focused on the choice to use a gun during a normal driving situation. David Desper was charged with serious crimes, including first-degree murder. The case went to trial in 2018. Prosecutors explained that this was not an accident. They showed that Desper chose to pull out a gun and fire while driving. They told the jury that no traffic issue justifies deadly force. Bianca's family sat in court and listened to the details of how their daughter died. In December 2018, a jury found David Desper guilty of first-degree murder and related charges. He was sentenced to 20 to 40 years in a Pennsylvania state prison. The sentence reflected the seriousness of killing a young woman during a brief traffic moment. The judge and prosecutors made it clear that Bianca's life mattered and that the law would respond firmly. Bianca's death deeply affected her family and many others. Her parents spoke publicly about their loss. They described Bianca as kind, thoughtful, and full of plans. She had just begun her adult life. They said it was hard to accept that something so small could take everything away. Friends and community members gathered to honor her memory and support her family. Case 13. Connor Fuller's anger during a road dispute in New South Wales led to the death of another person and a long prison sentence. In July 2021, Connor Fuller was driving in Southwest Rocks, a small coastal town in New South Wales. What started as a brief problem between two drivers turned into a violent attack. That attack ended the life of a 61-year-old man and placed Fuller on a path to decades behind bars. On July 28, 2021, Connor Fuller became involved in a road rage confrontation with Mark Tozer, a local man. Court records showed that the disagreement began while both men were driving on a street in Southwest Rocks. The issue was not serious enough to cause damage that could not be fixed. There was no emergency. Both vehicles were still able to move. This was a moment where the situation could have ended safely if one person had chosen to leave. Instead, the conflict grew worse. After the exchange on the road, both vehicles stopped. Words were exchanged between the two men. Mark Tozer was older and did not pose a threat. What followed was a violent assault. According to evidence presented in court, Connor Fuller attacked Mark Tozer repeatedly. The attack did not stop after a single blow. Fuller punched and kicked Tozer multiple times. Witness evidence and medical findings showed that the force used was severe. Mark Tozer was knocked to the ground during the assault. While he was on the ground, he suffered serious injuries. Emergency services were called, and Mark Tozer was taken for medical treatment. Doctors tried to help him, but his injuries were too severe. He later died as a result of the harm caused during the attack. Medical experts confirmed that the injuries from the assault were the direct cause of his death. Police arrested Connor Fuller soon after the incident. Investigators worked carefully to gather evidence. They spoke to witnesses, reviewed medical reports, and examined the scene where the attack took place. The investigation showed that this was not a simple fight. Prosecutors presented the assault as a violent and repeated act that caused fatal injuries. The case moved through the New South Wales court system over the following years. Connor Fuller stood trial in the New South Wales Supreme Court. The court heard detailed evidence about the road rage confrontation and the assault that followed. In November 2024, Fuller was found guilty of murder. The court rejected any claim that the death was accidental or unavoidable. The judge ruled that the attack was deliberate and caused Mark Tozer's death. Sentencing took place in March 2025. During the sentencing hearing, the judge reviewed the seriousness of the crime and the impact on Mark Tozer's family. The court also considered the fact that the violence followed a road dispute that could have ended without harm. Connor Fuller was sentenced to 28 years in prison with a non-parole period of 19 years. This means he must serve at least 19 years before being considered for release. Thank you for watching. Please like this video and subscribe to my channel. I publish interesting true crime videos on the channel daily.